Welcome to Tech Tuesday. My name is Rob Catto. I'm the program director for the game design graduate degree here at Full Sail. And today we're going to be discussing game design master student projects. The game design master's degree is a 12-month program with 3 focus areas: game design, production, and user experience. The production and user experience areas are also valid for outside industries outside of the game industry. Alongside the program, our students have to complete a capstone project. And here's a list of the capstone projects that we have currently at the university. And today we're going to be discussing the serious games track and the indie game track. I have with me 2 of the course directors from the program, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves and give us a quick overview of the capstone. Roy?
Hi, I'm Roy Papp, and I am a course director at Full Sail, and I teach asset management, as well as I am the capstone manager for indie games track. Inside that, I like students to come with their dream game and work in teams to create whatever they want, essentially, with some guidance, of course, and meeting Full Sail policy. I've worked at Full Sail for over 15 years and have loved every minute of it. And prior to that, I came from the game industry, working as an art director, development manager, for Electronic Arts, Cinemaware, Radical Entertainment, a couple of companies out there producing games you probably, or not producing, but working on games that you've actually played, hopefully, in the past. And ideally, I think that experience just helps me provide an interesting perspective for students that are trying to produce their games.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Gerard, Merritt, a course director here at Full Sail. I teach the Advanced Production Techniques course, as well as I am the manager of the Serious Games track, where my goal is to replicate the real-world experience that students would see working at a game company. In the Serious Games track, they focus in on educational games K through 12, as well as they do have opportunities to design and develop entertainment games. My background, been at Full Sail for 15 plus years, and I'm coming from the gaming world on the serious game side, so Lockheed alum, EA alum, and pleasure to be here today.
So what qualities or elements made these student projects stand out enough to be showcased here?
Yeah. For the project I picked from Indie, I really want to pick stuff that was available and you could go out and play it. Right now, you could go out to Steam or itch.io and find these games right now and see what they've done. It was also to make sure that there was a good representation or cross-section of the styles of games. And by no means this is extensive. There are games that are even like simpler, as well as maybe even more complex or of different genres. So the ones that I picked, I want to make sure that they kind of showed like some of the potential of what you could accomplish as a student at Full Sail, collaborating with a team of passionate developers and artists and designers to produce those games that you have in your mind and you just want to get out to the world.
Yeah, and then what I would say for the games that I'll be presenting today, not just because they're award-winning, it shows the variance of the different genres. And you'll see the different styles as art to audio as well. And, when you look at these games, it hopefully should stretch your mind into see that, games don't just fit into one lane, right? Mm-hmm. It's definitely a wide and varied spectrum.
So Roy's also already mentioned Steam and a couple other. Where can they get your games?
Yeah, definitely Steam, Apple, Apple as well as Android. So we do have mobile as well as on the platforms of Steam and itch.io.
All right, great. Let's take a look at the games. Roy, I think yours is up first.
Oh, yes. I think what was the first one we're looking at? Chronoblast. The project owner was Maddie Cook on this one. was a So it's not just coming soon, it's available now. So Chronoblast was a collaborative project. A bunch of students, Maddie in particular, came in and said, I want to do this kind of old or more of an arcade shooter, you know, a very visceral. I have this idea of all these characters that I want and a really clear visual style. She really lucked out because at that time, one of the artists that we had in there was super strong as a modeler and was able to build all the models that she wanted for the characters in this in short order and have them available and animated in the game. So if you actually go in, the UI is very nicely done. And as well as the project, I think when you look at it, just really has a nice level of feedback across the whole thing.
So were there any specific challenges students had to overcome for this project?
You know, eating the elephant and adding stuff to the elephant, I think is the name of the game here. You know, you go in and you have big dreams of epic boss battles and a massive upgrade system and way more characters than your game needs. And so there's always the challenge of like, yeah, you have that, but you have to balance that. You have to test that, as well as get it to a level of completion that it all looks done. And I think even when you look at the trailer here that's out there, you know, the trailer was done a little bit early, you know, it was a coming soon trailer. And there's some of the levels, you know, they're still not fully textured or lit. And I think that's just the nature of, you know, you're trying to accomplish a really big job in 8 months. And, you know, and as well as, you know, get it out to the world before you graduate. So trying to balance that, the passion for the dream that you want to accomplish, but then, well, now I want to pare it down and get it done. But you've kind of saved these things that you thought were your big moment until the end. And I think that's kind of that challenge that you face is like, oh, this level's going to be even better. So you always want to keep adding and trying to step back and just get a little bit of a dose of reality. The really good thing about this project, I think, is that later in the development, one of the developers that came in and we looked at the build, and it was a nice looking project, but it was feedback light. And I think when you look at it now, you'll see camera shakes. You'll see that, you know, it's not just that you shoot the gun and there's a sound effect, that there's the bullet, the enemy reacts to it. There's particles that are flying off of that. And there's more of a wider range of the player feedback, light flashes, you know, all those things that go from just going, hey, you know, the cause and effect approach to I hit a button and the player shoots and my HUD updates to all the stuff that makes you go, I felt like I was firing, you know, I'm bringing the firepower to this fight.
All right, let's take a look at the next game. Roy, I think it's one of yours also.
Oh, nice. This is Anarchy Park.
Welcome to the torture chamber.
So that was Anarchy Park. The product owner was Slater Rice on that. I think the one thing that I would sadly say is that though this video shows the game, it doesn't have all the sound that's accompanying it, which is really well done. And you know, so you're watching this and you hear the music and it's kind of fun and light, but you don't get all the feedback that it really should have if you were to see the whole thing. I think this game in particular for me, it was a small team, a very small team. Primarily the product owner and one artist that was actually, I believe he was working out of Blender, you know, the free modeling kit. And then there were a couple other people that helped with some level stuff as well. But this game was one that I think it's a good example of that games happen in small spaces. And so when you watch it, there's so many little attentions to detail that are going on. And Slater had a very clear idea of how he wanted this shooter, kind of the bullet hell type thing to go. Even down to the pirate ship that you see at the end. There are stages in these battles that you don't necessarily see here, where you fight the pirate ship, then the bullets start, the cannons start flying, and then the sea monster comes in, and like he was very much take this game and go off the rails, you know, and has a lot of fun little references, kind of to like the a Larson cartoon from Far Side with the cow that's in the spaceship, and you know, I think it was a playful game, and you know, Slater was one of those guys that is super passionate and super fun to work with, and again very receptive to the feedback. And his project early on, you know, he saw it and he was working towards his timeline of getting it done. And while he was working on it, he was like, I'm going to do X number of levels each milestone. We had 4-week milestones. And he shows the level that he was working on. And I look at it and he's like, hey, I'm ready to move on to the next one. And then my feedback was, well, yeah, you could, but I think you should actually finish this. And he's like, but it's done. And it's like, you have it, but you don't have it where it needs to be. And that's going from just building a game as a hobbyist to building it with a professional sensibility, where it's not just the thing is in, but the thing is in and looks good and plays well and feels like the experience that you want it to be.
So how are projects picked in indie?
Well, my primary focus is when the students come in, I say, bring your games. And they say, what's the greenlight process? And I'm like, well, the greenlight process is you need to pitch it and have a team associated with it. And so with that team, like, I want students not just to think about, well, I have a game idea, but I have people that are interested enough in my idea to move it forward. Because anybody can show up with a design and say, build a team around me. And I'm like, I want you to build a team around this idea, because you need to get them invested in it in order for it to move forward. And so when they come in, you know, it can start off just as a basic design document. Sometimes I'm even just happy to look at a pitch deck. And then when I pitch deck, I'm like, what's your vision statement? What are your pillars? What do you need for capacity? What do you anticipate needing? When will you have a schedule together? And can you show me a playable prototype? And if they don't have a playable prototype, it could be as simple as like, well, what do you need to make that happen? Do you need an artist? Do you need a designer? Like, what does it take to get it to demonstrate it's going to be fun before you move to the next stage? So, you know, when I look at it, I go, my job is not to approve your project, right? It's like to say, I am the arbiter of what is good or bad. I'm like, you got to come in, you bring your dream to the table. And then when you bring it, make sure you're within the Full Sail student policy manual for appropriate content. So we are within, you know, the guidelines that we have here. But aside from that, I'm like, build that thing that is in your heart that you really want to make happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, let's go on to the next game. Gerard, I think this one's yours. Oh. So what common themes do you see emerging from the current generation of game design students?
You know, I would say what we're seeing right now, it's students coming in with that big vision, right? Really great, you know, really expansive games, and these are the games that they're playing, rightfully so. So when we get those great ideas in, we try to have scope management where we tell them, hey, look, you have a specific period of time to get this done, and we may not have all the materials and the requisite supporting system, i.e., if there's a 3D game, they want 3D artists, they want all these animations. I'm like, well, we have to taper it back. Can we get to your vision without having some of these pieces and still make a good game for release?
How do you deal with interpersonal conflict when you've got a team and you've got two people that don't see eye to eye?
That's that personality management piece, right?
Yes, the soft skills. I think it comes down. You have to listen, pull people aside separately, hear where they're coming from, try to understand what's going on, right? It's like, I think when you're working on passion stuff like this, it's like we all are trying to climb the mountain and we have a different way to get to the top. And so with that, you got to go like, hey, what is at the heart of this? And I've seen sometimes where people are upset at the other person, and then half the time it's just because they didn't really talk to each other. They didn't take the time to sit down and say, what's going, like, where are you right now? What's preventing whatever from happening so we can get to a better situation? And sometimes students, like, you're working with somebody and it's not going well, and then they're like, I don't want to work with him anymore. And I'm like, well, and then they'll say, give me somebody else. And you're like, well, you have them. And I don't think you're ready for somebody else yet. So let's work through this and let's get to a better spot. And I'm always the standpoint. It's like, well, what data do you have to back this up, right? Because you can say, like, is it just you guys are just don't jive as people? Is there confrontation, or you think this person is not being or putting their full effort in? And I think you have to analyze that and take it case by case.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I think they've got the video ready. Let's go ahead and show the video.
Coalescence. All right, yeah, so that was Coalescence. That was a game that actually, I would say, is a sequel off of another game released called Descent. And, what you'll see in this visual novel game is that, we have multiple characters. And it's really an interesting, class system, player character system, as well as it's kind of like a psychological horror / sci-fi. And, I'm proud to say this was, one of our second games that we won an award at the Siege. And, we had a really great cast of students that, went through the design aspect as well as the development.
So a second group coming in, having to add on to an existing game, did they run into any specific challenges?
Absolutely. Scope management. They wanted this game to be even bigger. And, when we think about narrative design, right, and really having a game come across when you're so immersed in 3D, we had to really say, okay, let's have a good balance between audio visual, as well as quick time mini game events within the game as well.
All right, let's move on to the next game.
You're not going down there wearing red, are you?
Awesome. Yeah. So that's Guardian, and that's our 2D platformer. So what was really cool about Guardian, we had an initial release, and then students came back in and took the game to the next level. Same thing what Roy was talking about, that finished product, adding that quality to it. So in the second round, students enhanced the audio as well as that visual feedback for the player. When you're attacking an enemy on screen, being able to see that player feedback. So not just pushing the button, but really getting immersed into the game. And also we enhanced the artwork as well. So the visual capabilities of the game went up a notch as well.
So how does the structure of our Game Design Masters program prepare students for projects like this?
I think, when you brought up earlier, the pillars, right? Looking at it from the design, production, as well as that user experience. I think those 3 pillars really set the tone for the program. And then through the Capstone, students have the opportunity to apply those skills, right, in a very safe place.
Yes.
Underneath our guidance.
You have any comments, Roy?
Yeah, I think the big challenge that I see with students, we have the foundational stuff of the UX, of the design, of the production, but it's getting to the students to look at those things not as the cure-all, like you would have said, if you have a hammer, everything's a nail. And it's like, so when you teach them production, a way to do production, they have to understand that that's one way. And you'll run into students who go like, well, this needs to be standardized. I'm like, you've been to the industry, you've seen the standard. The standard is the standard's not there. Where everybody's making something a little different. They're experimenting at times. They have different philosophies on how they work. How they structure teams. Even if you look at roles, you look at, what is a designer at this company versus that company? Totally different. And so there's a degree of due diligence that I think a student needs to do when it comes to this, just being able to understand what we do in the classes, that from the idea of these are principles, but the principles are not universal, and they get applied kind of more broadly. And then they get chances to do so in the classes that follow.
An undergraduate looking at coming into the Full Sail Game Design Graduate Program, what do they need in their toolbox to be successful?
Yeah, I think, to be successful, like within the academic setting, your attitude, right? I think you have to come in with a willingness to realize you don't know everything, but the passion to be confident in what you do know. And that's a challenging thing, because I think some people come in and they're super confident, but almost not in the right area. And so then with that confidence comes a lack of willingness to listen and learn, because they often feel that they know everything and they don't need to learn anything else. And it's that matter of just being a little bit open to go, you know what, if you can pay attention to everybody comes in and realize they have something to teach you in their different disciplines that help add upon what you already know.
Do they need an undergraduate game studies background?
I think it's beneficial to have that. Like, if you don't have, because we do get some people that, we have a sociologist that often maybe go into the UX field, or writers that come in and maybe they're used to writing. I think that having that exposure, at least in at least some hours of working in a game environment, whether you're hopping in and using some of the free learning that's available in Udemy or anywhere else related to game engines, is going to go a long way to help you leverage it from being like, hey, is this just my passion about games, or can I actually do this as a living? Because if you come in and a writer and you think, I just sit around and write my designs all day and that's the job, I'm like, well, that's part of the job. There's more to that than just, that one skill set.
All right, let's go on to the next game.
Without audio in this one. So that one, we didn't hear any audio. I don't know if the audience heard the audio. Hopefully you did. But that was Two Foxes in the Puzzling Forest. It was a puzzle platformer available on itch.io. And John Somerville was the product owner on that and, came up with the whole idea. When I look at that game in particular, and why I chose it is it was a good example of leverage asset kits. So if you go out and you look on the Unity asset store, you're going to find that fox, you're going to find those boxes, you're going to find that sky background, you're going to find a bunch of these things. But those things are grabbed for the purpose of speed because you don't have enough time to get it done. And so you can't guarantee you're going to get that artist, that developer, or anybody else that's going to be there. So you got to go, okay, what's my game? How do I leverage what I can get for a very low cost against what am I going to build on my own? Also, that game, I think, is a prime example of a game that once you do the very basic mechanics is I can push a block and I can put a fox in a house and call a win condition, you can build puzzles all day long. And that game was, I think, one of those ones, I forget how many puzzles, there was over 80 or more that were built, many that didn't even make it into the final product. But it was one of those fun projects that, like I'll see projects where I go, oh my God, I want to work on that a little bit. And, I'll do some rough designs and hand it off. And it happened during COVID that we were doing all of this through Zoom. And so when we would show one of the designs in the meetings, people would sit there with whatever puzzle and figure out how many moves it was to resolve it without actually doing the puzzle. But I think, when it comes to certain kinds of puzzle games that appeal to me is that when you look at it, you see the solution. And that was what was a lot of fun about that little product there. And in it as well, there's lots of little details that I think that you don't even get, that we don't get to see here because, the game will come out, the student will have built this thing, and you'll look at it and you're like, your camera's not framed in the most effective manner. You're not using your space around your world as effectively as it should be, or any number of myriad of things that could happen in terms of just making it a fun, playful experience.
So, are there any key tools, software, frameworks that students are leveraging in these games?
I think that Unity, Unreal, Godot, Blender, Maya.
Say RenPy.
What is it? iCreator, iClone. Some of the character creator stuff out there.
The full Adobe suite.
Endless asset kits. There's so many of them that are available. Some will leverage AI if they, if appropriate to their project. I think when you come in with an undergrad, you have a base. And that base is, I think, what you can start to think of like, hey, how do I contribute and I actually add value to the team? And then from there, how do I supplement that value to the team with the things that I'm going to learn in the master's program, which really lend themselves onto the leadership side, the UX, the production, the design.
All right, let's move on to the next game. Is that another one of yours, Roy?
Yes, that was, and that was Slugger Punk, and the product owner was Aaron Aguayo. I think it's when I watch that, there's one of the moments that I keep wanting to see on his trailer, but he never put it on there. And it's that end shot where he's battling the chess set and the little knights are moving around the world. But I think that game is a good example where, you know, the little attention to fun little details in the whole product really come across. This was built in Godot. And, you know, the free game engine. So not necessarily the one that most students pick when they come in. You know, they come in, they go, oh my God, Unreal, I got to be on that. Or they're familiar with Unity because of the easy access to the coding. This student came in and, you know, was comfortable in Godot. And it was like, for me, I'm like, it's like, you use the engine that works, like RenPy. You use that because it works. And if you can execute it in the quickest way, then you move. Then that's what you should do. And it's like I think that project is also a good example of how multiple contributors kind of build the whole experience. For example, when there's that little fire that moves around that highlights the floor, you can really see, you know, somebody spent a considerable amount of time to get that effect to look good. And I remember looking at it in their PowerPoints and reviews. You see this little thing in isolation and you're like, oh, okay, whatever, right? But then once you see it within the context of the big picture, then it starts to come together. And I think projects, they all have this special point when it's like their heartbeat just starts to go, and you it's palpable, right? It's like that project comes in, and then there's that moment you go,
when it comes alive. Yeah,
that thing has that right thing, and that's that springboard. You know, it's like I think, you know, every time I look at these projects, and you know, teleports me back to working on games, and it was that when you're on these games and you can be isolated with the work you do, but being able to celebrate the moments of that game are so important. And when we do the milestone reviews, even though I do it to review the production, talk about it, and we do it studio-wide, it's also a chance for everybody to see everything and see the contributions of the team and the projects at large, which I think that's what motivates me when I come in. I go, I just see those magic moments. I'm like, man, that's so cool. Keep doing it.
What's one piece of advice you are consistently giving students as they start projects? Or as they're working through projects?
Yeah, as they're working through, you know, there's so many, but, you know, it's the one is that people will show up to help you. Like you might feel like, oh my God, how am I going to get this done? I need this, I need that. And there can be a degree of a scarcity mindset. And shifting that view to like, somebody's going to come help me, and there's ways to make this work. And I just can't see it now. And if I can kind of shift my thinking to like, you know, I can get it done. I just got to work a little bit at this, figure out the way to approach it. This school is filled with talent. There is talent at every corner. You walk around and you'll find somebody that can help you. And so, you know, whether it's faculty that you, like, you know, it's like when students work with me, I might often say, hey, you know what, you should go talk to this one professor that's in the program, because he's an expert in this area and he might be able to help you see something that you might need, or that can point you in a resource that I am not privy to. That can help you then leverage this issue that you're going to have. But, you know,
Absolutely.
You know, we're content creators, so we get in our little bubble and we get our blinders on and we want to do it all on our own. And it's like, hey, there's help out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would say to piggyback off of that, you know, we've worked with other programs underneath the Full Sail umbrella, and they've been a great support staff to a lot of our games, you know, from art to audio, you know.
Marketing,
yeah, definitely.
Game, so many different areas and people that have just been so helpful throughout the years.
Yep.
All right, let's take a look at the next game.
So yeah, so that was on call. That was the brainchild of James Cooper, and it was inspired by the hardships that medical professionals were dealing with throughout the pandemic. That was one of our pandemic games, and with its unique story and the beautiful art style, we tried to really show, from an educational standpoint, that it's not just necessarily 1+1s in education, right? It can be health and human services. It can be mental health. It can be questions on how to deal with hardships and things of that nature. So, we were really definitely proud of this game, and I'm glad to say that it was a short list for students, a student award for BAFTA, as well as for the Serious Game Society Students Awards as well. So it got shortlisted.
So do all student games that start in month 5 end up being completed in month 12?
That's a big no.
Yeah.
And all the reasons are not the same, right? Like some students, they get the project, they're really a glorified tech demo, and they're just not enough there, or they think they're going to finish it after graduation, and then they leave, and whatever happens in their life, they get a little bit caught up in, and they kind of just don't get back to it. Now others, they pass on to other students, and they get them done. We had one, the Spirits of Summerland, and it moved through, I think, 3 different owners. But the last guy that had it, he poured his heart and soul into that to get it out the door, and it showed. It's like I didn't include it. I didn't have enough good footage that I had access to that I thought it would show, the best that it could. But it was a project that it went almost a year past the end date, and I think that's when people engage these things, and
So I'm going to talk to the side of games that, what we call getting shelved, right? And I believe, Full Sail is a safe, fertile ground to still learn. So even games that got shelved, there's a learning experience there, right? It could be a resource issue. It could be, an actual product issue. And at the end of the day, as I tell all the students within the Capstone, the game has to be fun. Just because it's educational doesn't mean it's not supposed to be fun. That's the whole point of a game, right? So, looking at those different things, I would say it's not always a negative for it to be shelved, because there's still a learning opportunity there.
I think to add to that, it's like there's one game it was called Pigeon Airbeat. It was a dancing bird game. I thought that game was awesome. It never got finished. And for reasons related, unrelated reasons. Yeah. But that was the one I was like, from the get-go, I was like, this is awesome. And it just never, they never got it finished. One of the product owner needed to step away, which is always a shame. But, the best thing I've ever heard about project is every project has its own time frame. Maybe they'll ever go back to that one. I hope so, because I'd like to play it.
So I'm sure our viewers are wondering, if a project doesn't get finished, do the students fail?
Oh, no. It's like, I think in the industry, if your company, like you work for a game company and they don't ship your product, you still get paid. Yeah, you get paid, right? Because it's the experience here. You're making games. It's like publishing is just one piece of the puzzle. Right. And I think it's very valuable for the students to go all the way through and go, I had the idea, I got it in the store, and you're going to learn from that. But you learn at the same rate, even though you run into these parts where the game isn't coalescing, it's not coming together, and you're running into unforeseen things. And I don't think that's the most important thing in it. I've even been like, I've wanted to just do a tech project. I was like, I just want some tech. I have this great idea that I'd love us to see us tackle, and I think that needs to fit within the indie realm. We need to take chances, and if you don't take chances, then you can do something else that might be less risky, but I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I always say the tools are something that we need.
Yeah.
The gaming tools. But no, we have multiple games going on at the same time. I always stress to the students, you should have 3 lanes, right? If you have that very, very long game, that large in scope size game, have smaller games in the pipeline as well. Why? Because that helps re-energize you for the long game. Because it's hard to see that goal because you're spending so much time with it.
All right. I think our next game's our last one, so let's go ahead and take a look.
Breaker's world is a dangerous planet, and your goal is to escape it.
I'm building a ship. Gonna get off this rock.
A brand new sci-fi RPG set in a unique world full of rust, danger, and opportunity. You are Jax, a breaker who has obtained a sentient mind core. And it's your objective to escape the planet by building a loyal crew and a spaceship. But on Breaker's world, resources are scarce. You'll have to traverse your way through fallen hulks, where dangerous traps and potential enemies stand in your way. In the outpost, the populace struggles to make ends meet. Management controls with an iron fist.
Everyone works for me.
And other breakers seek opportunity. Back on your ship, there are many upgrades to your ship or power armor to make. You've chosen a weapons core upgrade. Let's see what you can do, Captain. On a dangerous planet, desperate for resources, conflict is inevitable. And though you start out with a mind core, almost everything else you need, you'll have to find, trade, or take yourself. Building your crew, your ship, and increasing your armor's capability are critical to your survival. A new adventure awaits. How far will you go?
So that was Breaker's World. The product owner was Joel Belliot. I think that project for me is come in with your biggest dream and try to make it happen. Joel was a writer, had a writing degree and a fearless attitude. One of those people that he came in and he knew what he wanted to do. That team, that was one of the largest teams that kind of actually came into play in the studio, plus 30 people. He had no trouble recruiting. Like when I saw that, I just said, anybody that walks in the door is going to want to work on this. I could not see you not wanting to work on it. I want to work on this. This is awesome. But, he was one of those people that, he knew the time that he had to make it happen. Funny enough, he got hired before he even finished his degree, but, and then had to help kind of, hand off a little bit of the leadership to actually make it happen. But, it's one of those ones where it really demonstrates leveraging asset kits. Today you have game engines that can do anything, and asset kits that are just can make you make your stuff look super professional. Never mind if you want to do one of the free asset kits that are out there, or not free. I mean, some of the paid stuff that's used on feature-length movies. That's all available to you at reasonable prices. And I think even student budgets can handle some of this stuff. But I think that Joel was one of those people that he came in as a writer, but he was not scared to learn what he needed to process characters, hop into Unreal, dig in, learn how to get a character in there, learn how to put the voice in there, learn how to do anything it needed to be done. He bought Character Creator because he knew his time was short. So it's like, he even actually bought a mocap suit. but he didn't end up using it because it was like time did not allow him to do that. And I was like, not that I expect everybody to get a mocap suit, but if you do, let's play with this thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So, these games are all published, right?
Yes.
And where can they find them?
Steam or itch.io. If you search by the titles that are here, you'll easily find them.
Definitely on Steam.
Steam.
Yeah.
All right, I think we got our first question. I think it's for you, Roy.
Oh. Okay, for me, what was the biggest obstacle for you from going to a hobbyist developer to a professional one? So I actually, after I graduated in film and animation, I actually went into, started working at Radical Entertainment as a game artist, and I was working on a Super Nintendo title that was Speed Racer. There was like a fitness thing related to it, a SNES 64-bit. It was for the life cycle bike, so if you actually go to try to buy that cartridge, it goes for a significant amount of money because it's a little bit rare out there. So I never really went from hobbyist as much as going from somebody thinking I was going to go into film from somebody that just got a taste of gaming and kind of liked what the flavor was. And I had one artist that I had actually hired years later that said to me, it's like games are the Renaissance. That's where it's happening. That's where interesting things are, where you can do amazing things. And I think the technology world is just filled with that.
So we have another question. I'm starting the Game Masters program next week. I'm extremely curious to see how much freedom and control we have over our teams and how much team building control we have. And then the second part of that is, will we learn additional game engines besides Unreal? I'm going to answer the second one. We don't teach game engines because we're assuming that you have a game foundation before you come here. So no, we're not going to. Our three focus areas don't cover what we consider foundational knowledge, and that would be something you would cover in your undergraduate degree. As far as teams and freedom, I'm going to let you guys talk.
Well, I think there's a different, freedom and control. I think you have a responsibility to your team to allow them opportunities to contribute effectively and grow as well as you. And you have the freedom to be able to come in with your ideas of what you want to do here. Yeah. So,
and I would say, the team aspect is within your capstone, right? So it's the individuals who are within your capstone that would be consistent of your team. And all depending on team size would be to the scope of the game. So for example, as I said earlier, in the Serious Games track, we typically have multiple games running at the same time. Team sizes vary due to the scope.
Next question, what happens to games after the students graduate? Do they take them with them to work on or sell them, or do they stay with Full Sail?
Yeah, so it's like in my indie track, I have a company, Zygobot, and I every game that we make with the students is in association with Zygobot, so my company. And in my thing, I say I have no right, title, or interest in your product, and neither does Full Sail. Full Sail doesn't own what you make. You own it. You take it out there. With that comes the understanding that if you put something in there that somebody else's, that the liability is on you as well. So you need to have your due diligence done, and you don't just grab an unauthorized Mickey Mouse and put them in your game.
Right. Or licensed music.
Licensed music, yeah, you be aware of that. But if you want to put out a paid product and try to make do whatever you want with it, that is yours.
Yeah.
For these project teams, what type of planning and project management is encouraged? Agile and Scrum practices that are standard in the industry.
Yeah, so I'll take this one. I would say we definitely do Scrum for the most part, but what you'll also see and learn is that people don't use it verbatim, right? It's always some type of hybridized production style. So you may see Scrum Fall, which has a little bit of waterfall in it, right? So we'll teach those principles, but it all depends on how you would like to apply it. That's how I would answer that.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's like whatever one works for you, you're going to learn a lot of those methodologies when you're here. And so when you're building this stuff, it's like, I just want you to be accountable for the team. So it's like, if you have 300 hours of an animator's time, then do you have 300 hours worth of work that they can do? And that's about identifying what they need to do, being clear about what the deliverables are.
What advice would you give to students looking to take their projects from academic to commercial success?
Wow.
Advertise. Network, get it out there.
Yeah.
I think there's
have a good game.
Yeah, it's like, you know,
Polish.
Well, the funny thing is, like, if you watch and you said, what's the key to commercial success? And you walk over to a big AAA company and they're going to go, you have a key? Right? And it's like, look at feature films as well. It's like, people don't have a key. They have an opinion, and they go out and they try, and the market's a bit fickle. What is it? There's that Darius Kazemi, How to Win $1 Million, right? And it's like, it tells you how to buy lotto tickets. Some of it's luck for some of this stuff, being in the right place, the right product, the right time. And I think, we bring the ideas, and we have to try to do our best to get it out. There's lots of GDC talks about small developers trying to make it happen and how they do it. And I think it's like your job is glean as much of like what they've done. What was it? There was one game, I'm not going to say the specific one, but when he put out he was trying to do a single man project. He put it out. It ended up, like, it was just the demo of it. It got pirated by an Indian company. So it was distributed widely across India. And that's how some developers reached out for him to make it into a bigger product. And they were they did that Rodeo Stampede game. And they were the ones that saw his game and saw the potential for it. And it's a great GDC talk. I'm not going to cover GDC talks here.
Are there educational games that students are working on that will be for K through 12 students? If so, have K through 12 students tested any of these games?
Yes and yes. So we didn't showcase everything that we've done, but if you for example go to our Google store, you will see games K through 12, and as well as far as the testing user experience, we've worked with schools locally here to either have students come in and test the game, or we've gone out to the schools and did some extensive play testing.
How important is collaboration and interdisciplinary work in the student projects you reviewed?
It's critical. Interdisciplinary. It's like, what is it? Or cross-functional teams. It's art, dev, design, music.
A must.
Yeah. You got it. Well, maybe you can do it all, and then you don't need to talk to anybody else. But you're the unicorn, right?
Yeah.
How do you think graduate level work like this prepares students for real-world industry challenges?
You learn by doing. Like, you have to do this stuff. Right? It's like the stuff we're going to do here, or that we do here, is making and publishing games. And so what are you going to go out there? You're going to do the same thing. And the thing, you have to just understand that the things that you're learning are all valid. And when you talk about it, you speak with authority because you've actually been through that experience. And even though your experience is unique, it's relatable.
Absolutely. So when we say real world, we are mimicking what you will see in the industry. And with that, from conflict resolution, communication, working with your teammate, going all the way through the publishing life cycle, game development life cycle to publishing, or even shelving. It's an aspect in the real world.
Yep.
Do you see trends emerging in the kinds of stories and mechanics students are gravitating towards?
The latest hot thing is always the thing that they gravitate towards. Like, oh my God! And it's usually their favorite game. That's the one that they go towards. And I think there was a question that Gerard answered. And I think when students come in here, I think the number one thing is start looking beyond just your favorite game and just consoles. This market is big. It traverses or covers so much different territory that when students come in, I'm like, there's so many different platforms to get your content out there that you could do it as a solo developer now that you could not otherwise do. And it's
absolutely
pretty cool.
You'll find students always want to do that next big multiplayer, right? So, for my first-person shooters, if it's Call of Duty, they want to have a game where they have 20 of their friends, and I'm like, That's not as easy as you think, right? But I always steer them to say, hey, look at mobile, look at casual, look at monetization strategies. Gaming companies want to learn more about monetization, right? How to, not just to keep you engaged, but how to keep getting you to spend that almighty dollar within their games as well.
So I think we answered this question during the show, but we'll go ahead and ask it again. Since these are master students, do they draw their teams from undergraduates that are in their degree track? Where does the team come from? Other master's track students?
I think it's a mix of both. Like, obviously, if you've enrolled in the program, you are available capacity to one of the capstones. But it's like when teams are working on stuff, it's like if you know or you've taken the effort to meet a bunch of animators over in the game art area or the music department, and you need somebody doing music, don't underestimate what you can get from these, those casual conversations in the hallway to have people that would be interested in what you're going to do. And I think that gets to SGX, where these games are shown regularly. And actually, that's where the first time I saw Uncall and a lot of other games that Serious Games were working on. I would go in there and I would see these games, and they're so receptive to feedback. But it's just a really great networking opportunity, and students are looking for stuff to do. And so I say, hey, come on by. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I tell the students all the time, walk the hallways and talk to your classmates, because you don't know, right? So we've had many students from game audio, put a few songs, put a few tracks, or even, on sound effects in our games. And, that's all they did,
So any shout outs or memorable student moments you'd like to highlight before we close?
Yeah, I'd like to, a shout out to John Amos. He was a past instructor at Full Sail who passed away, many years ago. But, I worked with him. We ended up, after we left EA, and that's where I met him, we published our own games. And then we started to say, hey, let's just have students make their own games. And he was a big part of just me kind of working to get published games out on my own at the start. And that, I have a huge debt to that experience. And I think at the end of the day, when you're here, you find people that you can work with and, treasure those relationships. Those are, what that I do.
No, absolutely. I would say, I don't do Serious Games Track by myself. Robin Coleman, Stephen Forsyth, who's in game art, we all work and collaborate together to help and support the students. The students are the leaders. We're there as, in instruments to help them towards their success, as well as you, Rob, our leadership. So,
yes,
you cover us.
All right. Well, thank you very much, you two. It's been a pleasure. That's a wrap, folks. And be sure to join us next month for another episode of Tech Tuesday.